This is a tutorial on the Buyer Representation Agreement, CAR Form BRE. This is the exclusive version. There's also a non-exclusive version. Don't use that. Only use the exclusive version. I'm going to scroll up just to show you that this form is bundled with some disclosures and advisories, agency relationship, fair housing. These are also part of the purchase agreement. So you can fill them out now or later when a purchase agreement is being done. And we'll get right into the buyer representation agreement. So you're going to put the buyer or buyer's names up here, the name of your brokerage. Now, very important, you must put a starting date and an ending date. If you don't, this form is null and void and will not work. So make sure you have those dates, beginning and end. Now, for location, of course, the more broad the location, the better. I mean, if you put the state of California, I mean, you've basically boxed this buyer into only using you through the entire state. Maybe they'll sign off and say, sure, no problem, great. But they may want you to narrow it down to a particular city or county, but you're going to put a geographic location here. And then you'll put a price range. Again, the more broad, the better for the agent. But if you want to ratchet it down to something like between 500,000 and $1 million or something like that, you could. I just put $1 to $3 million because the more broad the range, the better. Now, you can check boxes if you want to specify a single particular property. And if you need to, great. If that's a condition that the buyer is expecting you to meet, go ahead and put that property address. If not, don't do it. There's also another box to check if you want to have a list of multiple properties. Again, unless the buyer expects you to do that, do not put it. The broader, the better, as it protects you, the agent. Now it talks about agency relationships. It was already disclosed up top, but again, here it is. And you don't have to worry about doing anything here. Single agency only, don't check these boxes, just leave them blank. This basically limits dual agency. Without boring you with the long explanation and just giving you a quick, succinct tutorial, do not check these boxes, just continue on. Now down here, we're in paragraph 3A. This is important. Check this box and put in a number here. Now, this is probably the most important concept in this entire form for you as the agent to understand and be able to explain to a buyer. And that is, in this form, the buyer is pledging to pay you your commission. Now, naturally, the first thought that comes to mind is, well, isn't the commission paid by the seller via the listing agent? The answer is yes. But in order for this to be a binding and enforceable agreement to protect you, there must be an obligation made for your client to compensate you. Now, I'm going to tie all this together as we get to the next part of this paragraph, but part of that is by creating this obligation that the buyer is going to pay you a commission. Now, I just put in 2.5% because 3/4 of all commissions offered are 2.5%, or at least they were, according to some report years ago. You can put 2%, you can put 1%, you can put 3%, but you need to put a commission amount here. If you don't, this form is null and void. Or I don't even want to say that, it's just simply unenforceable, which is effectively the same thing as being void. It makes the form pointless. So you want to put compensation here. Now, this is the clincher. Compensation payments and credits. Buyer is responsible for payment of the compensation, and that's what we're talking about here. However, if anyone other than buyer compensates broker for services covered by this agreement, that amount shall be credited toward buyer's obligation to pay compensation. What this is saying is that buyer's on the hook for this amount, but if there's a commission paid by the listing brokerage, which is what's typical, that's going to offset the buyer's obligation and balance it out. Now, there are provisions if these don't match. For example, the listing broker is offering a 3% commission and you put 2.5 here, that's going to be disclosed to the buyer. Or what if the listing broker is only offering 2% commission, you're putting 2.5 here. You can let the buyer off the hook for that 0.5%, or you can force the buyer to pay that 0.5% difference. The point is that This form must obligate the buyer to pay a commission, and Part B in paragraph 3 stipulates that whatever commission you're earning from the listing broker is going to offset this buyer's obligation. Because most of the time when this form is done, the buyer doesn't have to pay anything. It's the listing broker's paying the commission, the buyer's agent's happy, the buyer's agent's not going to use this form and go after the buyer if they're happy with the commission they're getting. So it all balances out and it's a wash. If that doesn't make sense, please leave a comment and I'll respond. All right, and then there's one other provision down here. So by the way, I left these blank because if I was filling this out, I would leave this blank. I would put 30 here. You could put even 90, but this basically says, hey, if this agreement expires, what happens if the buyer, the day after it expires, writes an offer on a place that they saw while you were their representative? This gives you a little bit of a buffer zone after the expiration of this document. So I would put this in here. And now I'd leave this 3 by default. That's fine. And I would leave all this here. This basically is stipulating that the buyer is not already in such an obligation or arrangement with another broker. We scroll through. Now, of course, buyer and broker are going to sign at the bottom of this document. More language explaining the broker's duties, buyer's obligations. Again, I'm going through this just like I would fill it out if someone called my office and said, fill this out for me right now. I'm going to have both parties sign. I haven't added anything to that last page. We put in the brokerage information, agent's going to sign, buyer's going to sign, and this form's done. That's it. It's 4 pages, which is very lengthy in my opinion. I have another video on a 1-page document for a property showing agreement that's much more palatable to buyers. Of course, if a buyer is willing to sign this, by all means, get this form signed because you're out working, paying dues, paying for MLS, lockbox, etc., paying gas to go out, and the most valuable of all, your time to go out, show properties, do research online, run comps. You're working for free on speculation that you'll be paid when a property closes. So you have to protect it somehow. And if it's not with this buyer broker or buyer representation agreement, then it should at least be with the property showing agreement, which is another video. It's a 1-page form that we created. It's a proprietary form that basically explains that if a buyer goes into a home, that you show the buyer agrees to use you as the agent. This form, just to conclude this, we're almost done here. This form is broad and general. It says that the buyer must use you as the agent, period. That's it. They must go through you as the agent. That can be a bit of a commitment for some buyers. The 1-page property showing agreement, however, there's no reasonable explanation to why a buyer wouldn't sign that form unless they had, an uncle or aunt or somewhere that was going to write the offer right after you do the work of showing them the home. Anyway, I will end the video there. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for watching.